In the Vietnam War, the U.S. Army used ghosts as a weapon. They took recordings of the disembodied dead and blasted these ghastly voices into the jungle. The cries of mothers and children, along with the mournful words of soldiers killed in combat, would echo through the landscape. This unconventional tactic filled the enemy and even our allies with terror. It also drew sniper fire toward very human targets. This is the story of Operation Wandering Soul. In Vietnamese culture, there's a belief that the dead must be buried in ancestral grounds. If they aren't, their soul can't move on. Instead, it wanders, tormented and lonely. Imagine being a Viet Cong soldier. You're away from home, exhausted and outgunned by the vastly more powerful American military. It's late at night and pitch black, and if you're sleeping at all, you're sleeping lightly, because at any moment, gunfire could tear you and all your friends apart. Then, through the darkness, you hear a child crying, "Daddy, Daddy, come home to us." And in reply, a father's voice says, "Oh my children, oh my wife, my dear children, here I am, I come back to you. But I'm dead, what a pity, I have died needlessly." But it was too late when I finally realized that I was wrong to join the Viet Cong. Friends, you are still alive. You still have a chance to see your loved ones. Rally now. Rally now to save yourselves, my friends. If not, you won't be able to escape from death. You will be killed like I was. Rally immediately, before it is too late. This wasn't a real ghost, it was a psyop. It's a horror show drawn from the spiritual and cultural life of the Vietnamese people, and it worked. According to a captain of the North Vietnamese Army, "We had weaknesses, we missed our homes, we are human like you. But worst of all, each night the Americans sent over helicopters broadcasting recorded tape of babies crying and women's voices pleading in Vietnamese for us to come home. Or a child's voice saying, 'Mommy is crying, she can't sleep, she loves you and misses you.' It went on like that all night. Can you imagine what it is like for a soldier in a tunnel that has been away from his family for years? At night, hearing those voices, it certainly affected the spirits of our fighters. Those recorded voices made us think of what we missed, but afterwards, we were more determined to fight. And fight they did. When American soldiers set up speakers to blast their ghastly messages, they would often be met with sniper fire. From the captain's statement above, we can assume that many knew the voices they were hearing weren't really ghosts. He identifies the voices as being recorded. For some, it inspired them to fight even harder. Others, though, chose to defect. And it wasn't just enemy troops who were affected. Chad Spar, who was a team leader in the 6th PSYOP Battalion in Vietnam, tells the following story. "We began hearing about the broadcast area being haunted by spirits of the dead. Local farmers were reluctant to work in the fields near where the broadcasts had originated. Unfortunately, other audiences, including friendly villagers and some RFPF militia soldiers, had heard the broadcast and were reluctant to engage the enemy. They believed the actual spirits were wandering lost and were in great anguish and pain. This was not an intended effect. About 2 weeks later, we repeated the broadcast from yet a third location, but this time the local VC seemed ready to respond. We had no sooner begun broadcasting than sniper fire was received, and it was quite accurate. The tree line we were using was quickly peppered with incoming fire, including at least one RPG round. We ended the broadcast, reported the incoming fire incident, and returned to our patrol base. Our RFPF partners reported that there was fear in the village about the ghosts in the nearby rice paddies and tree lines, but that the local VC cadres were not fooled and opened fire to demonstrate that they could drive off the spirits. Not sure if the spirits were driven off, but I was. Spirits may not be real, but incoming rounds are definitely real." This American soldier doubted the reality of spirits, but many Vietnamese didn't. The tradition of wandering souls is an old one, and it took on a new and painful meaning in the years following the war. There were hundreds of thousands of dead unaccounted for on both sides of the conflict, and people would see them and speak to them. In 1993, for example, a man saw his deceased wife and children where his old house used to be. During a massacre in his village in 1968, his house had burned down and his family perished. Decades later, according to anthropologist Hanik Kwan, his wife, seated on a stone, greeted him somewhat scornfully. The 3 children were hidden behind her back, afraid that their parents might start quarreling. The meaning of the apparition was immediately clear to the man. He must rebury the remains of his lost family without delay. If he had no means to do so, according to the local interpretation of the apparition, the spirits would help him find a way. The man decided to spend the small sum of money that he had saved in the past years from selling coconuts and negotiated to obtain a loan from a neighbor. At that moment, a wealthy businesswoman and a relative of his wife arrived from a distant city and offered to share the cost of reburial. On the day of the reburial, the woman told the visitors how the family of spirits had appeared to her in a dream and urged her to pay a visit to their home. Sergeant Major Herbert Friedman records an especially poignant ghost story, related to him by a Vietnamese man. Near my office, there is a restaurant where I normally had my lunch. I noticed that there were 3 small tombs in the garden without the names of the dead, but carefully taken care with fresh flowers. I asked the owner who they were. She said that they were 3 young NVA soldiers who died while retreating during the Tet Offensive. One morning, she opened her door and saw the 3 dead soldiers. When she complained that the bodies could cause disease for people, an ARVN officer told her to temporarily bury the dead soldiers in her garden. He said, later, after everything is quiet, we will send someone to take care of the bodies. The woman buried the 3 men in her garden. She said one night she dreamed that 3 young boys visited her and said thanks. They were in civilian clothes but had northern accents, so she guessed they were the dead soldiers. She said that somehow, after she buried the 3 soldiers, her business prospered despite the war. She strongly believed that it was the spirit of dead soldiers helping her. In 1975, some officials of the new communist regime came and asked her to let them remove the remains to a military cemetery. But she refused and said that there were no dead soldiers in her garden, only 3 relatives that died during the war. Without evidence of the dead soldiers, the local authorities gave up. She said since their parents never knew where and how their children died, she considered the 3 soldiers as her sons. Vietnamese tradition holds that once the remains are properly buried, these wandering spirits are no longer ghosts, but ancestors or war martyrs. This process has a name, and it translates to liberation from grievance or liberation from incarceration in grievous history. Incarceration in grievous history. What a phrase. My videos typically conclude with a theological reflection. As a Catholic, I want my work to draw the soul to God, but I'm very reluctant to place these stories in a tidy spiritual box. During my research for this video, I found myself confronted with a worldview I didn't understand and a grief I cannot imagine. There are fathers and mothers, brothers and sisters, and sons and daughters, all weeping on both sides of the veil. A character in Joyce's Ulysses says, "History is a nightmare from which I am trying to awake." Before such pain, I think we can all appreciate the sentiment. And I think every one of us can pray for the peace that passes all understanding to mend so many broken hearts.